If you're an amigurumi lover just like me, there is a huge chance you have one of these at your home or one of these. But what should we do with all the fiber that keeps expanding day after day? If you're new here in the channel, I am Bianca from Crocheting, and luckily for us, there are some amazing ways that we can use these scrap yarns. So yeah, in this video, I'll bring you some amazing ideas on how to use those scrap yarns, and I'm sure you're going to like them. The first tip that I have to share with you is, I think, the most common one. And this is something that everyone talks about, and I'm very happy to say that since I started crocheting amigurumis like back in 2015, I have always done that. I always kept a small necessaire like this one with all the scraps of yarn inside of it, and every time I have a huge amigurumi project, I stuff my amigurumis with these scrap yarns here. Like this big one, this is my Mrs. Claus. I created a big version with fluffy yarn, a chenille yarn, and of course there is lots of polyester fiber inside of this amigurumi because it's better to shape. But every time I have a big project like this, I like to put the polyester fiber around, like, let's imagine this hat. I put polyester fiber around the hat, and inside this fiber, I put the scrap yarns, and it's really useful. The amigurumi stays very firm. You keep the shape of the toy, which is something that I always mention when talking about stuffing amigurumis. And so yeah, this is something very interesting that you can do with your scrap yarns. And for me, this is actually a very good way to repurpose this leftover yarn that we have at home. My tip number 2 is something very tricky that I used to do in the beginning of my crochet journey. I think I already shared this story in other videos, but I'll tell you again. In the beginning of my amigurumi journey, so I didn't know how to fasten off. My sewing was not beautiful at all. I didn't know what to do with the remaining thread. And actually, there will be a video here in the channel with 3 amazing tips that I have to hide the remaining thread in your amigurumis. But for now, let me tell you that as I said, in the beginning I didn't know what to do with this remaining thread, fastening off, and sewing was ugly. So I used to create small ornaments to hide these things in my amigurumis. So for example, I remember an elephant. It was one of the first amigurumis that I made, and sewing the head to the body of the elephant was very difficult, and the sewing was awful. You could see like the stitches in zigzag, and it was very ugly. So I created a bow tie, and I remember until now that the amigurumi looked so pretty. No one could see any flaws in the toy because I hide the ugly sewing with the bow tie that I created, and it ended up perfectly. So I used to create this sort of ornaments like a bow tie or a lace, or I don't know, a small hat. I remember I created a hat for an octopus that I created, and also there were some holes in the decreasing part of the amigurumi, because by that time I didn't develop the technique that I showed you in other videos too, on how to hide the holes between stitches when we are making decreases. So as I said, by the time I hadn't developed the technique yet. So I created a small hat, and I put the hat on top of the amigurumi, so no one could see any mistake. And I am a perfectionist, so it was very hard for me in the beginning when those simple techniques were not well developed, and I looked at the final amigurumi and I saw some things that I didn't like, and I didn't know how to solve these issues. So making small ornaments was something very interesting for me. It added like a unique touch to the amigurumi. No one noticed the mistakes, and I was also happy in the end. I won't create any small tutorial here right now because otherwise this video will take hours, and this is not the aim. But please, if you want me to teach you how to do these small ornaments like a bow tie or a lace, or I don't know, a small hat or whatever, please write here in the comments the word ornament, so I know that this is something that interests you. Tip number 3, clip decorations. I have two quick tutorials here in the channel. One for a small star, it takes like 2 minutes to do this star, and one for a small heart. This one I think it's even faster because it's very tiny. But a few weeks ago I saw a very nice idea on Instagram of a small crochet heart sewed in a paper clip. It is something so simple and so beautiful. She even put the paper clips inside of a book, and you can see how cute it is. And it's a very simple and very fast idea that you can create with your scrap yarns. So you can create your beautiful paper clips using the tutorials that I have here in the channel, like the mini heart and the fast star. But I'll also leave the link for this girl's Instagram page that I found, where she also teaches like another way to do the crochet heart and sew in the paper clip. Well, my tip number 4 is something amazing. I have never seen anyone teaching this technique before, and it adds like a unique touch in your amigurumi dolls. Believe me. And this technique consists in creating stripes in the amigurumi dolls, like this one that I have here. Creating these stripes are easier than you think. It only takes like, I don't know, a few centimeters of yarn, because as you can see here in my Beatrice doll. Yeah guys, this is her name and I love how she turned out, and I also think her name is very creative. But talking about the stripes in her clothes now. It only took like a few centimeters of yarn, as I mentioned. You do not have to glue or sew anything here. It's very easy, very fast to be done. And you can see that even though I didn't sew or glued anything, I can pass my finger here and it's so well secured and fastened here that you won't lose the stripes. And it's a very, very nice way to use remaining threads that you have and add some unique style in your amigurumis. My tip number 5 is something that I have already used a lot in my amigurumis, and I also have a tutorial here in the channel teaching you how to do it. Do you know what is it? Yeah guys, I am talking about the French knot. I think French knots are so easy and fast to be done in the amigurumis. You can use like a really small amount of yarn to do it, and like these ones that I created in my reindeer, it looks very beautiful. I create these small dots in this reindeer head. It looks very, very pretty. And another possibility, and this is something that I usually do when I want to create earrings in my dolls. This is the technique that I usually use because it's fast, it does not demand lots of yarn, and it's simple and it looks pretty in the end, which is also something that I did in Mrs. Claus. You can see it looks very pretty, and I used the French knot technique to make her earrings too. And I did this in the plushy version and also in my cotton yarn version too. So yeah, as I said, you can create the dots in animals like I did with my reindeer, or you can also create earrings for your dolls using the French knot technique. If you're still here with me in this video, remember to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any new tutorial and free patterns that I'll bring here. But hold on, because I still have 2 amazing tips for you. Tip number 6, you are probably a bit tired of listening to me talking about it, because you all know that I don't live without stitch markers. I strongly believe that stitch markers are a must-have for all amigurumi makers, but there are some people who don't like to use them, like my husband actually, and he usually prefers to use scrap yarns. I'm trying to find a good scrap yarn here to show you. Yeah, maybe, like this one. And I also mentioned it in other videos. My husband crochets, he really likes to do it. And since I taught him how to crochet, he never liked using stitch markers. And I tried different brands. I used to have those cheap plastic ones that you can buy in AliExpress, and he didn't like them. So after that, I bought some better ones, like the ones from Clover, which are my favorite. But yeah, I think he just got used to using scrap yarns to mark the beginning of his amigurumi rounds. But as I said, there are lots of different stitch markers in the market, and I've tried different stitch markers. There are some metal ones that a friend gave to me once, but I didn't like it too. Although it didn't open the stitches, it was difficult to keep opening the stitch marker like every round, so I also didn't like them. Until now, my favorite ones are the ones from this box here that I have from Clover. Stitch markers are amazing. It comes in 4 different sizes, so you can vary depending on the thickness of your yarn. But in case you just have those cheap plastic ones that I mentioned before from AliExpress that keeps opening your stitches and you don't like them, you can also use your scrap yarns to mark the beginning or the end of your amigurumi rounds as you prefer. But scrap yarns can also be used for that purpose. And last but not least, if you have small balls of yarn like this one or this one that are like too little for an entire amigurumi doll, but they are too much for small details like the ones I mentioned before, like creating stripes or French knots, you can always create small accessories using these yarns like coasters, pencil holders, keychains, for example. I have a few examples here with me. I created this beautiful pumpkin here. Look how beautiful it is. And I had some leftover yarn, leftover orange yarn. I didn't know what to do with it. It was next to Halloween. So yeah, I created this beautiful pumpkin that serves really well as a keychain, and I also use it in my scenario when I'm photographing amigurumis in Halloween season. So yeah, I'll always keep this one with me for Halloween purposes. Recently, I also created this beautiful star here from the movie Wish. I love this star. She's so cute. And this is a free pattern that I created. You can find the pattern in my Instagram account. I'll leave the link here in the description so you can check it in case you are not following me there. But this is like a very fast pattern, but this is a written pattern that are lots of pictures, and this is very easy and fast to be done, and you don't use like a huge amount of yarn to create a beautiful star like this one. I also created 2 tutorials for Easter season, which is like an Easter egg and also a carrot, and you can use like just small amounts of yarn like this one. And you can also check my Instagram account for free patterns and tutorials for these small amigurumis that can serve really well for keychains. Well, if you happen to have a scrap yarn use suggestion that was not mentioned here in this video, please write to me in the comments below, because I'd love to know your suggestions on how to make proper use of this scrap yarn, and maybe, who knows, I can create a scrap yarns part 2 video just using your suggestions. And now I'll leave you with this other video here because I'm sure you'll like it too.